Hi everyone, I'm Nikki Armstrong. I am your instructor for this online public speaking class. I wanted to give you an example of how the introductory speech should work, but before we begin with that, I actually just want to start with how you will go about doing your recordings for your speeches. So the very first thing you need to do is have access to a camera, webcam, phone, any of those things should work. And then I want you to follow these steps. So the very first thing is I would appreciate it if you would introduce yourself so I can make sure that you are getting credit for the work you are doing. The next thing is that I'm going to ask you to make sure that you show the camera your note card so I can give you credit for those. So you do it just like this. So this is my first note card. Some things I want you to notice about it. I know it's backwards, but I have notes written along the margins to assist me. That is something that is allowed on your note cards. So I tend to talk quickly, so I write slow down. So if you even look at my next note card, it says slow down on them. So that way it will help me remember to slow down while I'm speaking. A few other things to keep in mind about the note cards are that you cannot use complete sentences unless you are writing your introduction, your conclusion, or a citation. Those are the only things you can have written out word for word, but it is not required. Outside of that, you can only have notes. So again, I apologize. I know that this is backwards, but if you look, my intro ends right here. So all of these rest of these notes are just words. There are key words that are going to help me if I get lost in what I'm saying. So that's my first note card. This is my second note card, which if you notice again, I know they're backwards, and when you record them, they'll probably be backwards too. But again, I just have notes, little words to jog my memory, no complete sentences. My third note card is the same way. Key notes, no complete sentences, things to jog my memory. My fourth note card is a little more written out because it is my conclusion. In your conclusion, you are allowed to write out word for word. So I don't have mine quite word for word, but I do have it more written out than the rest of my note card, and that is allowed. Intros, conclusions, and citations. Other things that are important to note is to make sure that all of your note cards have your initial, so that's backwards, but it's N-A and then a number. So this is my third note card. And you only want to write on one side. So all of my note cards have writing on one side, the other side is blank, so that when you are looking at them, you don't see any notes, and I'm not doing lots of flipping back and forth. It's just the process of moving one note card to the next. A few other little minor notes are things I want you to pay attention to yourself while you're practicing your speeches and getting ready to record your speech. Number one, if you look, my hair is back. So it's not in my face, and I'm not going to be tempted to try to push it back, which is a nervous gesture which reduces your credibility when you are presenting a speech. Also, if you notice, I'm going to move my chair off to the side here. I have a dress, a rather formal or business casual outfit on. It is something that makes me feel confident, makes me happy and ready and proud to present, and makes me feel prepared to do so. So that is something else that I want you to make sure that you are taking into consideration. I also have no loud or hard to see jewelry. And so after you sign in and you share your name and you share your note cards, so I know you're obeying the rules, then the next step is to make sure that you are far enough away that we can see you from at least the waist up. If you want to do your full body, you can do that as well. So after you introduce yourself, show your note cards, take your position, take a moment or two if you need to, and then begin your speech. So as you know from the introductory speech assignment, the first speech is for you to share something about yourself that you are passionate about. And so that is what my speech is on. This is an example of one of my passions. So in a moment here, I'm going to begin my speech. After I'm done, I'm going to give you a few final closing notes, and then I'm going to leave you to go ahead and work on your own introductory speeches. To be or not to be. Double, double toil and trouble. Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? There is far more to theater than just William Shakespeare. Whether I'm backstage, on stage, or in the audience, theater will always be my one and truest love. My first experience with theater was when I was 12 years old, and I had the opportunity to work backstage on a production. 17 years later, I've done almost everything there is to do behind the scenes. I have worked on costumes, I have raised and lowered curtains, I've directed, I have done makeup. I even spent 2 hours flat on my back running a fog machine for a production. The scariest moment I have ever had with theater is when I was up on a 16-foot ladder painting a flat. A flat is the walls, or it's usually a large piece of material that we paint to look like a room or to look like a piece of landscape. So I was up on a 16-foot ladder painting this flat, and my foot slipped and I almost fell. This scary incident still did not make me lose my passion and love for the theater. How many people can say that their passion almost killed them but didn't stop them from doing what they love to do? So while I loved being backstage, to me there is nothing better than being the one that gets to be on the stage acting. I have acted in over a dozen plays, and I've got to play a variety of different characters. I've got to be a lion, a brick road, a flower, a bumblebee, even a witch. And that split second before the lights come up to begin a play is one of the best moments that I have ever experienced in my entire life. The adrenaline rush is par none. I've gone skydiving, and the adrenaline rush right before a play starts is even better. And then once the play gets going, to be able to make people laugh with a funny joke or cry with a dramatic performance or get so sucked in that you could hear a pin drop because everybody's deathly quiet to hear what you have to say is just the best feeling in the world. I love to act, and I will continue to do so until the day I die. I am itching to get back on stage. So if you happen to know of any open auditions, let me know. But just because I've done things backstage and on stage, that doesn't mean that I don't love being the one in the audience, taking in a show, especially when I get to take in a Broadway show. I got to do an 8-day trip to London, and while I was there, I got to see Spamalot, Wicked, Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, and of them all, my all-time favorite show that I've ever gotten to see has got to be Wicked. I've seen it 4 times, 3 times on a traveling show to the Orpheum in Minneapolis, and 1 time I got to see it in London on Broadway, or as they call it, the Upper East Side. My number one reason why I love Wicked so much is because of the star, or the original star of the show was Idina Menzel. I feel that she is the #1 best actress of Broadway for my generation. Now, I've also got to see other fun shows like Lord of the Rings the Musical, which has this great spectacle. And if there are any Lord of the Rings fans here, the character Gollum at one point in time crawls down the set. But nothing was as weird as the time I got to see Jerry Springer the Opera. Yes, you heard me correctly. Jerry Springer the Opera. It was amazing. Something I will never get to experience again. Whether it's the spectacle and special effects and beautiful singing that is live theater, which makes it better than any television show or movie I've ever seen, or whether it's my experience backstage or the sublime joy I get of being on stage, there is one thing that will always remain the same. Theater will always be my first and truest love. But between you and me, and please do me this favor, don't tell my husband that. So with that being done, there's a few things I want you to note. A few things I've been talking about in my lectures. If you notice, I did not start my conclusion with in conclusion. I just went into it, and yet you were still able to know. That's something that has to do with the writing. I also want you to notice the start of my script, or my speech, had an attention grabber. I used some well-known Shakespeare quotes, but used that to lead into how theater has affected me. And then I also had a strong closing line. I ended with a joke about me asking you not to tell my husband about my speech, or about the fact that I love theater more than him. Now, in reality, most of you would probably know that I don't really love theater more than my husband, but for the sake of this speech, it was a great final note to end it on. The only other things I want you to notice is how all of my gestures had preciseness, had exactness, had a purpose. There were not a lot of extraneous gestures. Instead, they were all serving a specific purpose, whatever it was. I also want you to notice, because it's something I did notice, I also am not a perfect public speaker. One point in time, I noticed that my hair got under the way and I tucked it behind my ear. I should have bobby pinned that back before I started my speech so that I didn't have to do it later on. So I am not a perfect public speaker, but I do believe I am a strong public speaker. Which leads me to my next little bit of information. Whenever I give an example of a speech, some people really like it because they now know exactly what I'm looking for. The speech I just performed is an A speech in this class. Some people get really intimidated by watching me give a speech because they're worried they are not as good as I am. And the only thing I can say to that is I've been giving speeches for over 15 years. And so it's expected of me to be a strong public speaker, and this class is going to help you become a strong public speaker. So while you may not be that good the very first time you give a speech in this class, there is the possibility that you will be that good by the time we get to the last speech we are giving in this class. If you have any other questions or concerns regarding the introductory speeches or anything else that has to do with the class in general, do not hesitate to email me or post on the numerous discussion boards that are all over our Angel site. Thank you for taking time to watch this example, and I can't wait to see all of the wonderful speeches you all are going to show me.